All right, all right, all right, all right. How is everyone doing this fine Wednesday morning? Hit the horn. All right. It is time for episode 2 of the Echo Chamber. We're going to get right into this. As you know, this is our new series. And normally this would air probably Sunday evening. I haven't found the perfect spot for it yet. However, with the Martin Luther King Day events, Friday and Sunday, I was unable to get this out. So that is why we are getting into this today. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. This episode is going to be about the advocacy of boys and men here in Washington State. And let me go ahead and pull up my slides for today. All right. So the numbers show that Washington boys and men are struggling. And over the course of this conversation, we're going to share with you some very alarming stats that many of us probably didn't know about. Okay. So we're looking at victims of suicide here. So these stats are from 2017 to 2021. And as you can see, out of all of the suicides over those 4 years or 5 years, if you're counting 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, we're looking at almost 5,000 suicides from males, with only 1421 of women. And I shouldn't say only, because that's an alarming number regardless, right? But we are talking about more than 3 times the amount compared to women. That is a very alarming stat, and we need to look into why is this happening? Why is this happening? If you want to take a look at the source of that, that is from the CDC. Youth victims of suicide, same time frame. So for our boys, 733, and for our girls, 203. As we can see here, still about a 3.5 times amount when we're comparing our boys to our girls. And that source is the same source as before. Okay. Now, unfortunately, it's a real situation that suicide is going to happen. And so we acknowledge that. But we want to work at trying to decrease those numbers. And the fact that these numbers are so high over the course of 5 years, we have to ask ourselves why. And if you're also looking, this is pre-COVID, right? This is pre-COVID. Deaths from drug overdose. And as you can see here, we're looking at 2019, and in all of these stats here from 2019 to 2022, we see that boys unfortunately are dying from drug overdose uh, in every single year, right? And by pretty significant numbers, and those numbers are increasing um, quite a bit. So in 2019, we have, let me go ahead and take that stat off of there. We have 65% of all drug overdose deaths for males was 824, which is 65% of all, right? More than half. And again, one thing to keep in mind is when we're talking and advocating for boys and men, two things that I want to really bring to your attention. One, it's not a zero sum game to say, hey, we're talking about the avocation for boys and men. And so that means that we're taking something away from girls and women. Not at all. And also the fact that boys and men or males make up 50% of Washington State's population, right? So we're talking about half of the people that live here. So that is important to consider, right? We are a very intellectually honest crew here. And so we're going to look at the data for what it is and move accordingly. Okay, so in 2022, 68%. It did not change percentage wise from 2020 to 2021, but then it moved up again another 3 percentage points in 2022. Okay. And those are huge numbers, especially when you're looking at from 21 to 22. If we're looking at the difference between 1887 minus 1549, we're looking at a few hundred, right? Compared to 757 and 714 for the girls in that same time period, right? So we're talking about 40 plus compared to hundreds plus, right? That's severe, severe. Okay. All right. Deaths from opiate overdoses. Uh, Again, another chart here. This is from the Kaiser family. Let me go ahead and put that. I want to put these sources in here for you so you can check it out. This is not an opinion based show. This is a fact based show here. And so you can check the sources there. And as you can see, 67% boys. And you can see again, that chart is a pretty steep incline year after year as it increases from 67 to 72% of all deaths from opiate overdoses in Washington state from 2019 to 2022. Okay. And in that final year there, well, not last year, we're in 2024 now. In 2022, 1,434 for males and 566 for females. Deaths from alcohol abuse. And again, uh, these numbers should be very alarming to us. Many of us are in survival mode. And so we don't have time to look at or know all of these stats. That's why this information is so important here. Again, this information is from the CDC. 66% of males from 2018 to 2022 died from alcohol abuse. It's almost 5,000. Okay. And you can see for women, that is half of that number, right? It's a huge number there. Mental health counselors. Now, this one is a big one. I'll give you just some of my own uh, experience. When I was adopted, my adopted father thought it was important for us to have um, male counselors, black male counselors, right? Who can identify with us that had a shared lived experience and that could give us the counseling that we needed that was best suited for us. And that was very difficult to find. I believe there is only one black male counselor out here on the peninsula. And I still need to get that information. So I'll have to reach out to Dr. Riley or some other medical professionals to find out who that is so I can bring you that info. But as you can see here in 2022, there were 12,449 I'm sorry, male counselors, which is 25% of all counselors. And for women, there were 37,932. And so when you're looking at the deaths from alcohol, when you're looking at the deaths from suicide, when you're looking at the deaths from drug overdose, right? There is a huge need, right? There's a gap of male counselors to provide that counseling to boys and men. Let's go on into social workers here. And again, we see the same thing, right? In 2021, in Washington state, there were only 1,192 male social workers, only 16%. Again, this can be very difficult when boys and men are in need of social services, uh, and to get by some of those implicit and implicit biases that exist because they do, right? And 6,365 uh, female social workers in the state of Washington in 2021. That is a huge disparity there, right? This, excuse me, this information is from the Health Systems Quality Assurance from the Washington State Department of Health on 2021. And this count includes all active licensed practitioners at that time. Unsheltered people, 70% of those who are unsheltered in the state of Washington in 2022 was 70% male, 8,572. And as we know, this is a gross underestimate because of the point in time counts, right? In King County, men are 85% of deaths among people experiencing homelessness in King County. And that source is from the Seattle Times in 2022. Now, the source for this is, of course, you see on this podcast all the time that we are at the county's website and the Department of Commerce, right? There's a lot. So we're looking at the point in time count again. And that is literally what it means, right? For those that don't know what the point in time count is, they pick a day, they go out and they try to count as many unhoused folks as possible, right? But of course, folks are moving around, and so you don't get an accurate count. So these numbers are typically undercounted. Now, when you take in effect that many homeless shelters are either for women and or families, that means that there aren't a lot of places for men, right? And so that becomes a huge issue. Homeless people in 2022, 15,365, 63% of those folks are male. Okay. The source for this is the Washington State Department of Commerce again, where we have about 9,000 who are female. So these are homeless people in the state of Washington in 2022. Let's move on to imprisoned people. Okay. And we're going to make a distinction between prison and jail. So we're talking about prison here. 94% of all people in prison in the state of Washington in 2023 were male. 94%. Okay. When you look at the fact that it costs an average of $63,000 per year to house an incarcerated individual, there has to be a better way to one, reduce recidivism. Also, well, probably even before then, is to provide opportunities so folks aren't feeling like they need to break the law and put themselves in this situation far cheaper, right? What does it cost for us to house an individual per year? You know that I've done a show on families who are on Section 8, getting child care assistance, WIC, SNAP benefits, and whatnot. And we know that that is very close to the same amount. And so you can have a person who is locked up and is not contributing anything to society. Matter of fact, would be a deficit, especially if they have children and aren't in their children's lives as active participants, and don't have an opportunity to professionally and personally build, um, to have opportunity. And so you can see that this is a huge issue. But again, when we're comparing this to the women in prison, it's not even close there. All right, let's go ahead and look at jail here. So for jail people, it's 87% are male. Okay. At 6,432. These numbers are based on 2022 reports. And this is from the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police. Okay. Again, this isn't opinion, this is a fact based show here. And this is Washington State. So for those that are just tuning in, we're looking at uh, statistics and oftentimes the disparate statistics of what our boys and men are going through here in the state of Washington, and the fact that we need uh, to be addressing this. We need to be looking at this. You saw in a few slides earlier, we're looking at a range over 5 years in some of these stats. And so boys and men have been suffering for quite a while, whether it's drug addiction, death by alcohol, suicide, and whatnot. Okay. And so here we're looking at jailed people here, 87% of those being male. All right. Next slide here. Let's go ahead and take a look at youth and juvenile rehabilitation. Here again, we're 91% male, right? So when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, this is where you start to see these things continue to manifest, right? So this is starting at the juvenile level, right? And so you saw the numbers previously, 87%, and for jail and 94% for prison, respectively. And here we are at 91%, uh, whoops, 91% for juveniles in jail, right? 91% of those are males, almost 2,000 there. This one was very surprising to me. And let me go ahead and put that source up here for you. This one was surprising. This one here is missing persons. You would think that maybe females would be leading in this stat, and that is not true. And this is really surprising. This was really surprising to me. Again, it's much closer, but still, boys and men outweigh the women in regards to missing persons in the state of Washington in 2022. Okay, by about 300. That's a huge amount, right? There's 300 more boys and men that are missing in 2022 than girls and women. That is an alarming stat. And the stat comes to you by the Washington State Patrol. And so when we think about sex trafficking uh, and whatnot, we think of that primarily as being something that affects women and girls more. And as you can see here, that is actually not the case here in the state of Washington. Very surprising stat for me. Let's look at uninsured people. In 2021, 65% of males were uninsured. This is from the Kaiser Family Foundation, and these are the uninsured rates for non-elderly adults, and you can get that information there. And I'll save my exposition on this after I get through this next stat here. So again, 65% of males, uh, and then 90% of males are killed in the state of Washington from 2017 to 2021. Okay. And while we know that many of us advocate for equal pay for women, equal pay for equal work, we do know that men typically do more dangerous work. So not only are they uninsured more, but they're also being killed by a rate of, let's see, how many times does 4 go into 36? About 9 times, right? Almost 9 times men are likely to be killed or have been killed versus women in different fields. This is from the Department of Labor and Statistics and the Census of Fatal Occupational Injuries. And this is where you can get this information, right? And so these are statistics that we do not hear about in mainstream media. We do not hear about these in the circles of advocacy. Um, and we're advocating, there's a lot of different groups that need to be advocated for. And again, it's not a zero sum game, right? And so while we are, just shouldn't say we, while some folks, some groups are advocating for, the reduction or the elimination of toxic masculinity or down with the patriarchy, uh, at the same time, there are boys and men that are suffering in silence. And these are pretty alarming numbers here. And no one is discussing this. No one is here advocating. And if you have boys in your family, if you have sons, little boys for sure, understand that these statistics they're lumped in, right? So will your loved one be one of these folks in these horrible stats here? That's what we want to bring attention to today. Okay. And again, that goes for people injured at work. Okay, that is still disproportionately affects males. And again, that is typically due to the work that men do, right? They typically do more dangerous jobs. So 61%, 72,000 versus 45,000. Homicides. This one was another one that was surprising to me. Again, this is from the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police chiefs. So I'll put that here so you can see it. But again, 76% of homicides are male. 76%. It's about 2.5 times here, or 3 times. 3 times. And so we have to look at what is causing this homicide and how do we reduce this. One of the things that is not talked about, right, is we will look at domestic violence, right, and we'll say, okay, the man has killed the woman, but we don't look at the proxy violence of the woman who has got a another lover or an uncle or a father or a brother or friends to go and kill uh, the ex-boyfriend or the baby father or whatever the case may be, right? And so what's said is, well, look, the reason why these numbers are so high is because it's male on male violence. But that male on male violence, there's a piece in there where there was a woman that was involved that activated a man to perpetuate violence or and murder on another individual. And we have to talk about that. People killed during military service. Okay. This was another alarming number, right? 97% in our military. And again, that has to do with the jobs that men do versus women do typically in our armed forces, right? 150 compared to 5. And that is 2021 to present for Washingtonians. Again, this data is just for Washington State, everyone. I want to be clear on that. Okay, and that's from the Defense Casualty Analysis System. That's pretty alarming. Head of single parent household for 2022, only 38,552 males were a head of household as a single parent in the state of Washington, I will tell you that I know several uh, custodial parents that are head of household as a single father here in the state of Washington. Uh, all great fathers for sure. Shout out to them. And you've seen one or two on the conduit actually telling their story. Another slide here, you can see the residential time of children with no risk factors here. This is from the 2016 Residential Time Summary Report for the Washington State Center of Court Research. Okay, and I'll put that in there if you want to look at that information. This was really interesting. I dug a little bit deeper into this. I went to the link and took a look at this because I was really interested at seeing what this data had to say. But you can see when you're looking at time that is given with more time with the father, those numbers are super low here, right? We're talking about we're not even hitting 5%. Okay. And so if you're looking at the bottom, they spend 100% of time with the father. If you're reading the graph left to right, that is like what, maybe a 1%, 90%, maybe a 2.5%, 80% of the time with the father and 20% with the mother, maybe 4%. Uh, and then 70% and 60%, it starts to go down again. And then with 50-50 uh, time with the father and the mother is a little under 25%, but you can see typically the mother is going to have more time with the child. Okay. Very alarming numbers there. As we go to our next slide here, we're looking at children in single parent families. This one is definitely near and dear to me, as this has plagued the Black community, and where I thought it was disproportionate, other groups are catching up, right? And so you can see here in 2021, in the state of Washington, Black families uh, make up single parent 50%. 50%, half of all families in the state of Washington that are Black are single parent families. That is dismal. It's horrible. And we're not going to go into the stats today about how children have better chances and opportunities if they're in a two-parent household. Okay. For Hispanic and Latino single parent families, 43%, two or more races, 34%, with non-Hispanic whites at 23, right? So when we're comparing ourselves to single parent families that are white compared to Black, we're talking about half, right? Well, if you look at Asian and Pacific Islander, it goes down to 14%. And if you flip that and you said, hey, is there a correlation between children in a single parent family versus a two parent household and the economics, the money that's coming into those homes? You could flip that chart on the other side. And that's exactly what you would get. You would see that Asian Pacific Islanders are bringing in the most money, the non-Hispanic whites, two or more races, Latino, and then Blacks at the bottom, right? So this is just a flip of that chart. And so we have to look at that. We have to acknowledge that uh, and understand that what is being done is not working and we must do something different. Okay. This source is from the American Community Survey Kids Count Data Center. And the link is there if you would like to take a look at that. High school dropouts in 21 through 22, 60% were male. Okay. So we're talking about 5,137 that have dropped out. Now, unfortunately, I was in that number. Haven't only completed the ninth grade. Not in 2022, though. I wish. Huge issue. And even for our girls, that's a big number there, 3,000. That's a big number. Now let's also take a look at our literacy gap. You've heard me talk about this. And again, before I was talking national numbers. Now we're just looking at the state of Washington, right? This information can be found at OSPI, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. This information was accessed on November 13th of 2022. Okay. Turn this up here. All right. So the next one is test scores and gender gaps of the largest 25 metro areas. This one again was quite surprising here. As you can see, and this source is from the Brookings Institute, that Seattle is pretty high on that list. Again, quite concerning, right? In Seattle, girls outperform boys in English by almost one grade level, 0.99. Why is that? Now, we have heard uh, growing up that, girls don't do well in math or as well in math for a host of reasons, right? And there's male teachers or there is a bias that girls aren't good at math. You've heard me talk about that because I have a daughter, right? And I push math on her because I don't want her to be afraid of it. I want her to excel in it, right? But we don't talk about the flip side of that and where boys are falling short. And that's huge. Okay. If we're looking at elementary school teachers, uh, there are only 9,890 male teachers from 21 to 22 compared to 44,000 female teachers. And so you can see this is a field that is predominantly female, right? 82% of grades PK through 5 are women. Are women. And so boys aren't exposed to male teachers, which is a huge issue and a challenge, right? All of these things play a role. And so we know how important it is to be taught and to be around what we say, people that look like you, right? And that could look like you in many different ways that could bear itself out. Let's go ahead and look at our next slide here. Community and technical college enrollment from 2018 to 2022. You can see in 2018, 43% male, right? So uh, women have a 57% in far as enrollment from that same period. And then you see that it pretty much tracks, right? And to me, this looks like COVID uh, kind of dipped on these numbers, but the gap never really changes, right? That's about the same throughout. And we've seen the numbers here, right? We talk about those numbers a lot, and typically we talk about uh, one that enrollment is decreasing, but we also talk about that boys or men are not going to college in the numbers that they were going to before. We can look at our undergrad enrollment for 4-year public universities, and you can see another drop off. Again, the gap does widen here when you're talking about 4-year, right? Universities. And that source is the 4-year dashboard here from the Education Research and Data Center. So you could check that information out. And we're looking again from 2018 to 2022. And as you can see from 2018 to comparing 2018 to 2022, that gap is widening, right? And so we're talking about 45% male. And these are things that we're going to have to look at. When we look at postgraduate enrollment, right? So this is master's degree, PhDs. We see that the number is going up, increasing for women uh, from from the beginning, because this is that chart is steadily going up. It is also going up for men, but barely, right? The the slope of the line there for female compared to male isn't even close, right? And so 42% of males are seeking postgraduate enrollment, master's degrees, PhDs. Uh, and what I'll say to this is when folks are talking about partnership, getting married, or being with another individual, women are typically looking for someone who is evenly yoked, right? And so you can see all of these statistical divides in the state of Washington where you don't have this equal yoke going on. So what ends up happening is it is harder for women who are looking for a male mate that is quote unquote on their level, right? Because you see that the choices are just going to become exponentially fewer. All right. So there is a commission. They're advocating for a commission right now in Olympia. Let me show you this one pager here. Pull that up. And this is SB 5830 and HB 1270 to establish a Washington Commission on Boys and Men. And the commission will assemble data and experts, connect public, private, and nonprofit partners, consult with state agencies, establish commissions, and make recommendations for policies and programs to help improve the well being of Washington's boys, male youth, and men. Okay. And I shared with you many of the stats. Let me just move myself out the way here. Whether it's mental health or physical health, education, jobs, careers, financial health, fatherhood, family and relationships, the court system, you can see the numbers are not good for our boys and for our men, right? And I hope that people don't see this as a zero sum issue, right? We can advocate for girls and women, and it's not taking anything away if we're advocating for boys and men. And I'm speaking from someone who has two daughters and two granddaughters, right? But it is definitely important for the health of our state and the health of our country. Okay, the prime sponsors are Senator John Lovick, who's a Democrat, and Representative Mary Dye, who's a Republican. So this is a bipartisan um effort here. You can get more information if you want to help advocate. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat. Again, they could use some help. Uh, and if we don't do something, we're just going to continue to see more and more crime, more and more people suffering. And we're seeing it now, right? We're seeing it with the Kia boys, the Kia girls. You know, our kids are just out there on their own and they need the support. Anyhow, that is this episode of the Echo Chamber. I hope that you will join me for the next episode. I hope you will join me for the next episode as we will continue to have these conversations and enlighten people and bring information that just isn't talked about, right? This channel, this network here is about teaching. It's about elevating, and it's about informing the community at large. And that is what we hope to do. So until next time, I am Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other.